Hello YouTube divers, this is WaterDive 122 and I want to welcome you to a very special video. For those of you who have watched my little short that I posted yesterday, then you already know what's in store. We're going to be talking about the Vikings Colts game from yesterday. What a game that was. It's the first time I've done an NFL video in almost 2 years. Hard to believe it's been that long, but here we are. So, recently I've been feeling like, okay, NFL videos and stuff, like, they really aren't just for me. I mean, I love the NFL. It's fantastic. I love watching the games and stuff. But usually I don't really like to recap or really predict or make NFL videos anymore. So that's the biggest reason why I haven't been really busy in the NFL predictions, situations, things like that. But this is a very special one because this game between the Indianapolis Colts and the Minnesota Vikings had so much historical significance to it that it's just blowing up the internet. And for those of you who don't know or haven't even heard of what happened in this game, the Indianapolis Colts jumped up to a 33-0 lead at the half, and the Vikings came back in the second half, and they won the game 39-36, which broke the record for the largest NFL lead, for the largest lead blown in NFL history, regular or postseason. It was a record that I mentioned in the short. It was a record that was originally set by the 1991 Houston Oilers, I believe. Sometime in the early 90s, the Houston Oilers played in the wild card round against the Buffalo Bills. The Oilers jumped out to a 35-3 lead, but the Bills came back and won the game in overtime by a final score of 38-35, which at the time was the largest lead blown in NFL history, regular or postseason. But now we have a new we have a new record holder for the books, and that is the 2022 Indianapolis Colts. So we're gonna go ahead and get this party started. But to understand how we got here, let's go through the main contexts of the game, shall we? So we're going to start off with the visiting team, the Indianapolis Colts. So the Colts are coming in with a record of 4-8-1. They were pretty much out of the playoff picture, or so we thought. Coming into the game, the Colts had a very low chance to make the playoffs. They were having a very disappointing campaign. In free agency during the 2022 offseason, they picked up quarterback Matt Ryan for the Atlanta Falcons and cornerback Stephon Gilmore from the Carolina Panthers as their two biggest notable signings. And in the draft, they drafted Cincinnati Bearcats wide receiver Alec Pierce, who I thought was a massive steal for the Colts because I watched that Cincinnati team in 2021, and Alec Pierce was an absolute stud. So I knew he was going to be a nice contributor in the passing game for the Colts. Then you also have, on top of that, with the players they already had going into the year, one of the league's best offensive lines. They had the reigning NFL rushing champion in Jonathan Taylor, which I don't think he's the best running back in the league, but he is definitely up there. The dude's a beast. And of course Michael Pittman Jr. at wide receiver 1. And the defense was also pretty rock solid, particularly the defensive line led by DeForest Buckner, Kwity Paye, and Shaquille Leonard. And in free agency, the Colts picked up Yannick Ngakoue from the Las Vegas Raiders, which I thought was another big move for the Indianapolis Colts. But the offensive line has been struggling all season. Matt Ryan cannot turn the ball over. Cannot just not turn the ball over to save his life. I mean, he leads the league in both fumbles and interceptions thrown, if my memory serves me correctly. And it's just been a very bad season for Matty Ice. I mean, no way to put it. In the defense, while they have been good this year, they're kind of on a regression compared to previous seasons, which for Colts fans is something that you do not want to see. Yeah, it was just bad. They fired head coach Frank Reich mid-season, and in return they got Jeff Saturday, who played for the Colts for around 13 years or so. He's a Hall of Fame center, but his only level of coaching experience was at the high school level, and he didn't do well there. So, yeah, a lot of people were scratching their heads. But after the Colts played some more inspired football under Saturday's reign, if you disregard the massacre that was the Cowboys game a few weeks ago, then really the Colts haven't been terrible under Jeff Saturday. They haven't been good, but they haven't been absolutely terrible. And then the Dallas Cowboys game happened, where it was a close game for 3 quarters, and then the Cowboys scored 33 unanswered points to win the game 54-19, which was just horrific to watch if you were a Colts fan. Then they had their bye week, and then they were coming in against a 10-3 Minnesota Vikings team on the road. For the Vikings, they were expected to finish second or third place going into 2022. Nobody expected them to be in the place where they are right now going into the year. A lot of people were looking at the Green Bay Packers, and the Packers have been a flat-out disappointment. Sure, they lost Devontae Adams, but come on, man. But the Vikings have just impressed everybody. If you disregard the 3 losses that they've had this year to the Eagles, Cowboys, and Lions, then really this has been a spectacular year for the Minnesota Vikings. That offense, led by quarterback Kirk Cousins and wide receiver Justin Jefferson, who leads the league in receptions, which is not, by a comfortable margin. This mini offense is just absolutely unstoppable. Topped off with Dalvin Cook at running back, a good offensive line-ish, and of course having Adam Thielen and KJ Osborne as your second and third wide receivers behind Justin Jefferson is a nice skill set of players right there. And the defense, while they were hit and miss this year, they've had their moments. But not in the first half of this game. This was pretty bad. So the Colts got on the board first. They kicked a field goal. Then a little while later, they blocked a Vikings punt and returned it for a touchdown, which put them up 10-0. And then on the Colts' next offensive possession, I believe, they went on a nice long touchdown drive, capped off by a 1-yard touchdown run by running back Deion Jackson. And then after that, the Colts settled for a field goal to go up 20-0. Then they had another field goal, which gave them a 23-0 lead. Then Kirk Cousins threw a horrible pick six, and that really kind of shifted the momentum Indy's way, if it hadn't already. Indianapolis now jumped up to a 30-0 lead, and before halftime, they managed to kick a field goal thanks to kicker Chase McLaughlin, who had an outstanding day, if I may add. He kicked a, I believe it was a 52-yarder at the gun, 52-47. It was a long field goal, right at the gun, and Indy led 33-0 at halftime. And it was a bad look for the Vikings, and a lot of people took to social media. They ranted about the Vikings, saying how overrated of a football team they are, and admittedly, I thought the same thing too. And then the second half happened. So Minnesota managed to score a touchdown on their first drive, set up by a 63-yard completion to KJ Osborne, and it was capped off by a touchdown pass from Kirk Cousins to the aforementioned KJ Osborne. So the Vikings avoided the shutout. Good for you. On the next drive, they held Indy to a field goal, and now they were down 36-7. Minnesota then orchestrated one of the And then, after a 1-yard touchdown for the Vikings, courtesy of fullback C.J. Ham, things started to get interesting. The Colts offense couldn't do anything to save their lives, and Minnesota managed to gather all the momentum they could possibly get, from a touchdown completion to Adam Thielen, to another touchdown completion to Justin Jefferson, and then things started to get very interesting. They were down 36-28. They got a stop on 4th and 1 after Kirk Cousins threw a horrible interception, and after he failed to convert a 4th and 15. The Vikings defense managed to stop the Colts just an inch away from the first down marker, and Minnesota got the ball back, and immediately Dalvin Cook on a swing pass caught it, and he ran right past the Indianapolis defense, fought his way into the end zone for the touchdown, which cut the lead down to 2. And, of course, the Vikings went for 2, and they managed to convert it thanks to a nice pass from Kirk Cousins to tight end T.J. Hawkinson, whom they acquired from the Lions a few weeks prior. And now it was a tie game. And we hadn't even reached the 2-minute warning, mind you. So, basically, the Vikings had all the time in the world to beat the Colts in regulation. All they needed to do was allow their defense to get a good stop, which they did, and then drive down the field, melt some clock off, and then have Greg Joseph kick the game-winning field goal. That did not happen, as the Colts defense bowed their necks down and forced the Vikings to punt right before the end of regulation. So we went into overtime. The Vikings got the ball first. They had a nice drive, but it was stalled due to penalties and a Kirk Cousins and a sack, which the Colts had 7 of them today. The Vikings are really no strangers to having multiple sacks in a game, but, whatever. And then the crazy thing happened. The Colts got a couple of first downs, but were not able to get into field goal range, so they punted back to the Vikings. The Vikings got the ball. They drove down the field. Justin Jefferson caught it for another first down. And then the Colts players held him down because the Vikes were out of timeouts. And if they held Jefferson down, he could not get up, so the Vikings could reset and could set the ball and spike it, and the game would end in a tie. Which, if that would have happened, the Colts would have been the first team in NFL history to have 2 ties in a season. However, the refs called a delay of game penalty on the Indianapolis Colts, which gave the Vikings more time, and therefore it set up Greg Joseph for a game-winning 40-yard field goal, which he nailed through the uprights. And the Vikings won the game 39-36, completing the largest comeback in NFL history. It was an insane game all the way through. And it was, honestly, might be one of the best games of the year, if I'm being honest. Now, there are a few things that happened in the game. The officiating was just absolutely terrible. The Vikings had 2 touchdowns called back due to non-fumbles, if you were. There were 2 of them. The first one, Michael Pittman dropped the ball after he caught it, but they reviewed it as an incompletion because he didn't make a football move, which I don't disagree with. But the second one, cornerback Chandon Sullivan returned it for a touchdown after the Colts fumbled it. Although the refs blew the play dead and said that the Colts running back was down, but replays showed that the running back clearly fumbled, and the Vikings basically missed the game-tying touchdown right there. Fortunately for them, they managed to get the game-tying touchdown, and they eventually won the game. So it's not really that big of a deal now that you look at it. But if the Vikings would have lost that game, then the refs would have definitely been under a bigger firestorm than they already are right now. Yeah, so basically those were 2 touchdowns that could have won the game for the Vikings right then and there. Overtime was not necessary if those 2 touchdowns would have stood. And the ironic thing and the crazy thing is that Jaden Sullivan returned both fumbles for touchdowns, and he got called back for it. Poor guy can't catch a break. And then, but like I said, doesn't matter. Vikings fans, don't complain about it. Y'all won the game. It's all good. Yeah, it was just pitiful. It was a pathetic performance, pathetic finish for the Indianapolis Colts, who are somehow still not mathematically out of the playoffs. But the Colts schedule does not get any easier. Does not get any easier from there. They've got several more very, very tough games coming up on their schedule, and they could very well be out of the playoffs within these next 2 weeks. As for the Vikings, they have now won the NFC North, the first time they've done it in the Kirk Cousins era, and the first time they did it since 2017, which, if y'all remember, that was the last time the Vikings went to the NFC Championship game. And that was when Case Keenum was their quarterback, and they still had Stephon Diggs, all those players. We all know what happened. But congratulations to the Vikings. They have won the NFC North. They're still the number 2 seed in the NFC. They're they're technically 3 games behind the Philadelphia Eagles, if you include the 2 games that they're behind with the Eagles, plus the head-to-head tiebreaker. The Eagles beat the Vikings back in week 2, so the Eagles hold the tiebreaker there. But the Vikings could very well win the number 2 seed and clinch home field for at least 2 of the playoff games until the NFC title game if they were to play the Eagles. Now, this was honestly crazy. I don't even have any more words to describe it. This was an off-the-walls, insane game from the very beginning, and I am still speechless to how the Colts can blow a lead as big as 33-0. Oh, and also one more thing before we sign out. Matt Ryan is the only quarterback in NFL history now to have blown a lead in the postseason and the regular season. He blew a 28-3 lead in Super Bowl 51 against the New England Patriots and 33-0 here today against the Minnesota Vikings. So, yeah, this has been a wild Saturday of football, and honestly, I'm glad the Vikings won, because sorry to you Colts fans, but I really do not like the Colts. Like, I really don't. Kind of a thing as a Titans fan, but, whatever. So with that said, let me know your thoughts about this crazy game. Were you on the winning side of it? Were you on the losing side of it? Tell me your thoughts down in the comments section below if you so greatly desire to do so. So with that said, thank you so much for watching, my fellow YouTube divers. This is WaterDive122 signing out, ready to dive and more fun on YouTube. Thanks for watching.